Look at this. This is Komatsuna. I planted these seeds once, just once, 3 years ago. And since then, they've fed my family every single day. Winter, summer, spring, fall, through frost, through heat waves, through everything. While my neighbor's spinach died in the first frost, this kept growing. While their lettuce bolted in the summer heat, this kept producing. I'm not exaggerating. This one plant changed everything about how I garden and how I feed my family. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why every single gardener needs to know about Komatsuna. Let me show you something most people will never tell you. Hey everyone, a real farmer who's been working the land for years. I grow food to feed my family and occasionally to sell at the local market. I've grown hundreds of different vegetables over the years. I've tried heirloom varieties, hybrid varieties, exotic imports, local specialties. But about 3 years ago, I discovered a vegetable that completely changed my approach to gardening. This vegetable is called Komatsuna. In English, it's sometimes called Japanese mustard spinach, but that name doesn't really do it justice, because Komatsuna isn't just a replacement for spinach. It's superior to spinach in almost every way that matters to a home gardener. This is a packet of Komatsuna seeds. Cost me about $3 3 years ago, and that $3 investment has given my family fresh greens every single day since then. Not just in the growing season, every day, January, July, October, March, doesn't matter. We have fresh greens. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds too good to be true. There must be a catch. I thought the same thing. When I first heard about Komatsuna from an old Japanese farmer at a seed exchange event, I was skeptical. He told me it was the only green he planted anymore, that it grew in cold weather, hot weather, didn't bolt easily, tasted great, and just kept producing. I smiled and nodded, but in my head I was thinking, yeah, right. Every plant has its limitations. I was wrong. That old farmer was telling the absolute truth. And today, I'm going to share everything I've learned about growing Komatsuna, why it works so well, and how you can use this one plant to feed your family year-round, just like I do. This isn't a sponsored video. Nobody paid me to talk about Komatsuna. I'm sharing this because I genuinely believe every home gardener and small farmer needs to know about this plant. Let me tell you the story of how I discovered Komatsuna, because it illustrates why this plant is so special. 3 years ago, I was frustrated. Really frustrated. I was trying to grow spinach year-round using succession planting. In theory, this should work. In practice, it was a disaster. I'd plant spinach in early March. Too cold. Germination was spotty. Growth was slow. By the time it was big enough to harvest, it was May, and then it immediately bolted because the weather warmed up. I'd plant spinach in May. It would germinate, start growing, then we'd hit a hot week in June, and boom, bolt city. Flower stalks everywhere, leaves turning bitter. I'd plant spinach in July for fall harvest. The seeds wouldn't germinate well in the hot soil. The ones that did germinate would struggle in the heat. So I'd go weeks, sometimes months, without fresh greens from my garden. I'd be buying spinach at the store, the same spinach that traveled hundreds or thousands of miles that was picked days ago, that cost $5 for a small container. And I'd look at my garden beds and think, I have space, I have soil, I have water, why can't I make this work? Then I went to a local seed exchange event, and I was talking to this elderly Japanese man, must have been in his 80s, who had a small farm about an hour from mine. We got to talking about greens, and I mentioned my spinach problems. He smiled, this knowing smile, and said, stop growing spinach, grow Komatsuna. I'd never heard the word before. He told me he'd been growing Komatsuna for 50 years, that in Japan it's one of the most popular greens, that it grows in hot weather, cold weather, doesn't bolt easily, produces heavily, and tastes great. I was skeptical. I mean, if this plant was so great, why wasn't everyone growing it? But he was so confident, and he pulled out a small envelope of seeds and handed it to me. Try it, he said. Plant some now, plant some in summer, plant some in fall. You'll see. I went home and planted half the seeds. This was late March, early April. Ground was still cold but workable. Within a week they germinated, little green sprouts poking up in neat rows, faster germination than spinach in cold soil. Within 2 weeks, they had true leaves. Within 3 weeks, I harvested the first baby leaves for a salad. Tasted them raw, mild, tender, fresh. By week 5, the plants were big enough for serious harvesting. I started cutting outer leaves, leaving the center to keep growing. And here's where it got interesting. It was now late May. The weather was warming up. My spinach was starting to bolt. The Komatsuna just kept growing, leaves getting bigger, no sign of bolting. June came, hot weather. My spinach was done, all bolted, pulled out. The Komatsuna, still going strong, still producing tender, tasty leaves. July, really hot, 90-degree days, and the Komatsuna just kept producing. I was harvesting leaves every few days. This is when I realized something important was happening. This plant was doing something spinach couldn't do. It was growing through conditions that would kill spinach. I was harvesting fresh greens all summer from that one planting in spring. All summer, from one bed, one initial planting. Meanwhile, I planted the other half of the seeds in mid-July. Those seeds germinated in the hot soil. Within 3 weeks, I had baby greens again. By late August, I had mature plants producing heavily. Fall came. Both plantings were still going. October, November. First frosts arrived, and here's where I really fell in love with Komatsuna. The frost hit my garden one night in early November. Temperature dropped to 28 degrees. In the morning, I walked out expecting to see damaged plants. My lettuce, wilted, my basil, dead. The Komatsuna, completely fine. In fact, the leaves looked crisper, fresher. I tasted one. Sweeter. The cold had actually improved the flavor. Throughout November and December, as temperatures continued to drop, the Komatsuna slowed its growth but never stopped. I kept harvesting. Not as much as summer, but enough for fresh salads once or twice a week. Fresh greens in December from plants I'd planted in July. By January, growth had almost stopped, but the plants were still alive, still green, still edible. And then February came. Temperatures started moderating, and the plants woke up, started growing again. By March, they were producing heavily again. Do you understand what I'm telling you? These plants from one summer planting had produced through fall, survived winter with minimal protection, and were growing again in spring. Nearly a year of production from one planting. That's when I became a Komatsuna convert. Let me walk you through exactly how to grow Komatsuna. First question, when do you plant? The short answer is almost any time. Komatsuna can be planted from early spring as soon as you can work the soil through early fall. In mild climates, you can even plant in winter. Here's my planting schedule. Early spring in March and April, I plant for spring and early summer harvest. Late spring in May, I plant for summer harvest. Midsummer in July, this is my most important planting. These plants will produce through fall, survive winter with minimal protection, and come back strong in spring. This one planting can last nearly a year. Late summer and early fall in August and September, I plant for fall and winter harvest. You can also do succession planting, planting new seeds every 2 to 3 weeks if you want a continuous supply of baby greens. Komatsuna is flexible about location, but here are the optimal conditions. It likes full sun to partial shade. In spring and fall, full sun is great. In summer, afternoon shade actually helps. It likes rich, well-drained soil with lots of organic matter. I amend my beds with compost before planting, about 2 to 3 inches worked into the top 6 inches of soil. Good drainage is important. Komatsuna doesn't like sitting in soggy soil. Now let me show you exactly how I plant Komatsuna seeds. Prepare the bed by removing any weeds and rake the soil smooth. Make shallow furrows using your finger or a stick, about 1/4 inch deep. Space the furrows about 6 inches apart for baby greens, or 12 inches apart if you want to grow them to full size. Sprinkle seeds along the furrow. Don't worry about perfect spacing. We'll thin them later. Use your hand to gently brush soil over the seeds, then press down lightly to ensure good seed-to-soil contact. Water gently using a watering can. You want to moisten the soil without washing away the seeds. Keep the soil consistently moist until germination. Use stakes or markers so you remember what you planted where. Komatsuna is a moderate feeder. I side dress with compost once a month during active growth. Just sprinkle a handful of finished compost around each plant. Too much nitrogen can make the leaves grow fast, but also makes them more attractive to pests and less flavorful. Here's some good news. Komatsuna is relatively pest and disease resistant. Flea beetles are the main pest I deal with. These tiny black beetles chew small holes in leaves. My solution is row covers. I cover young plants with floating row cover fabric until they're established. Aphids occasionally show up. I spray them off with water or use insecticidal soap if needed. Slugs can be a problem in wet conditions. I use beer traps or copper tape around beds. Diseases are rare in my experience. Good air circulation and avoiding overhead watering in the evening helps prevent fungal issues. In my climate, Komatsuna survives winter with minimal protection. When temperatures start regularly dropping below 25 degrees at night, I add a thick layer of mulch, 4 to 6 inches of straw around the base of the plants. When we get into really cold weather, sustained periods below 20 degrees, I add a row cover just draped over hoops. With this simple setup, my Komatsuna has survived temperatures down to 10 degrees with no damage. The growth stops, but the plants survive. Then in spring, they resume growing. There are 2 ways to harvest Komatsuna: cut and come again, or whole plant. When plants have at least 6 to 8 leaves and are about 6 to 8 inches tall, you can start harvesting outer leaves. Use scissors or a sharp knife and cut the leaf stem about an inch above the base. Take 2 to 4 outer leaves per plant, leaving the inner young leaves to continue growing. The plant will replace those leaves within a week or 2, and you can harvest again. Don't take more than 1/3 of the plant's total leaves at once. With this method, a single plant can produce for months, sometimes 6 to 8 months or more. If you want baby greens, harvest whole plants when they're 3 to 4 inches tall, about 21 to 30 days after planting. Just cut at soil level and use the entire plant. People always ask, how much should I plant for my family? Here's my rule of thumb. For a family of 4 eating greens 3 to 4 times per week, plant about 20 to 30 plants in succession. What I mean is 10 plants in early spring, 10 plants in mid-spring, 10 plants in early summer, 10 plants in midsummer, 10 plants in late summer. This gives you overlapping production. As you're harvesting from one planting, another is growing, another is just planted. Let me save you some trouble by telling you the mistakes I made. Planting too thick and not thinning, crowded plants compete for nutrients and light. Letting soil dry out in summer, Komatsuna can handle heat, but it needs consistent moisture. Over-fertilizing with nitrogen, excessive nitrogen makes leaves grow fast, but taste worse and attracts pests. Harvesting too much too fast. Don't strip all the leaves off a plant. Giving up on winter-planted seeds, Komatsuna germinates slowly in cold soil. Be patient. Now let me show you how my family uses Komatsuna. Young Komatsuna, 3 to 5 inches tall, about 3 to 4 weeks old, is perfect for salads. The leaves are tender and mild. My kids will actually eat these. We use it just like spring mix or baby spinach in simple green salads mixed with other lettuces, in sandwiches, as a base for grain bowls. Mature Komatsuna, 6 to 10 inches tall, 6 to 8 weeks old, is excellent cooked. Sautéed is the simplest. Heat a pan with olive oil or butter, add chopped garlic, add chopped Komatsuna, sauté for 3 to 4 minutes until wilted, season with salt and pepper. This is a side dish we eat 2 to 3 times a week. Takes 5 minutes. Komatsuna works great in any soup where you'd use spinach or kale. Add it in the last 2 to 3 minutes of cooking. It's traditional in Asian cuisine for stir-fries. Cut Komatsuna into 2-inch pieces and add it at the end with other vegetables. You can steam it for 4 to 5 minutes, then dress with soy sauce and sesame oil. Chop it fine. Sauté briefly. Add eggs for omelets and scrambles. You can even make Komatsuna pesto using the leaves instead of basil. Blend with garlic, walnuts, olive oil, and parmesan. We freeze Komatsuna for winter use. Harvest fresh leaves, wash thoroughly, blanch in boiling water for 2 minutes, plunge into ice water to stop cooking, drain well and squeeze out excess water, pack into freezer bags, removing air, label, and freeze. Frozen Komatsuna is great for soups, smoothies, and cooked dishes where texture doesn't matter as much. You can also dry Komatsuna leaves. Harvest young tender leaves, wash and dry completely. Dehydrate until crispy. Crumble and store in airtight container. Use dried Komatsuna crumbled into soups, mixed into spice blends, rehydrated for cooking, or ground into powder for smoothies. My kids have grown up seeing Komatsuna in the garden. They've helped plant it, harvest it, eat it. They know where food comes from. In a world where most people think food just appears at the grocery store, my kids understand that food grows in soil, that it takes time and care, that there's a direct connection between the earth and what's on their plate. Let's be real, growing food can save money, but that's not really the main point. The value isn't just in the dollars saved. It's in the quality, the freshness, the nutrition, the knowledge that your food wasn't sprayed with questionable chemicals or picked by exploited workers or shipped thousands of miles. When I harvest Komatsuna in the morning and eat it at lunch, that's maybe 3 hours from soil to plate. Compare that to grocery store greens that were harvested days ago, trucked hundreds of miles, sat in cold storage, sat on a shelf. There's no comparison in terms of quality and nutrition. 3 years ago, I was frustrated with my garden. I couldn't grow greens reliably. I was dealing with constant failures. Then I met an old Japanese farmer who handed me a packet of seeds and said, "Try this." I did, and everything changed. Komatsuna didn't just solve my greens problem, it changed how I think about gardening. It showed me that the answer to challenges isn't always more work, more inputs, more complexity. Sometimes the answer is finding the right crop, a crop that's adapted, resilient, reliable, productive. That packet of seeds, $3, has fed my family fresh, nutritious greens every day for 3 years. Through summer heat and winter cold, through droughts and rainy periods, through busy times when I barely had time to garden. It's asked very little of me: decent soil, consistent water, occasional harvesting. In return, it's given abundantly. Hundreds of pounds of fresh greens, thousands of meals, health, security, peace of mind. This is what food sovereignty looks like. Not growing everything, not being completely self-sufficient, but having reliable, productive crops that you can count on. Crops that free you from total dependence on a food system you don't control. And here's the beautiful part: you can do this too. Anyone can. You don't need a large garden. I'm growing this in maybe 50 square feet total. You don't need perfect conditions. Komatsuna tolerates a wide range. You don't need years of experience. It's actually easier than spinach or lettuce. You just need seeds readily available online or at garden centers. Soil, even poor soil with some compost, will work. Water doesn't need more than other vegetables, and basic knowledge, which I've shared in this video. Here's what I want you to do. Go buy some Komatsuna seeds. They're easy to find online. $3 to $5 for a packet. Plant them. Follow the steps I've outlined. I'm confident enough in this crop to make a prediction. If you plant Komatsuna and give it even halfway decent conditions, you will have success, you will harvest greens, and you'll wonder why nobody told you about this vegetable sooner. And then share what you learn. Give seeds to neighbors. Show friends your harvest. Teach your kids. Spread the knowledge, because that's how we build resilient communities. Not by hoarding information, but by sharing it freely. I planted Komatsuna once, 3 years ago, not really knowing what to expect. It was an experiment, a packet of seeds from an old farmer. Those seeds grew, they produced, they survived conditions that killed other crops, they fed my family, and they taught me lessons about gardening and food and self-sufficiency that I'm still learning from. Now, 3 years later, Komatsuna is as essential to my garden as water or soil. It's the backbone of our greens production. It's the crop I count on when everything else is uncertain, and the seeds I save from it, I give them away freely. Because abundance isn't about keeping things to yourself, it's about sharing generously. These seeds have fed my family for 3 years. They'll feed us for many more, and they'll feed whoever I share them with. That's the miracle of seeds. That's the power of finding the right crop. That's the promise of Komatsuna. Thank you for watching, and from my garden to yours, good luck, happy growing, and may your harvests be abundant. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.